Erika Ortiz. She's class of 2012, as I said, and she's going to be sharing her advice on effective job searching techniques and strategies for preparing for an interview, and how to put your best foot forward. And during Erika's time at Monmouth, she was really involved on campus. She studied business finance as well as Spanish. So she was in a few different departments for her academics. And she also studied abroad, was part of a global experience program, service trip to Guatemala, and held various leadership roles on campus. So today, Erika is an experienced recruitment specialist and serves as the human resources lead for talent acquisition, diversity engagement, and delivery at Johnson & Johnson. So Erika, I know I speak on behalf of everyone here that I say thank you so much for hosting today's webinar and providing us with this helpful information. So Erika, it's all yours. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you to you and Jeff and everyone who's taking time out of busy schedules to join the webinar. It's truly an honor just to be back here and have the opportunity to kind of pay it forward and share a little bit of insider tips on everything I've learned during the last almost 9 years with J&J within their recruiting department. And I will say this has come full circle because I worked very closely with Jeff while I was at Monmouth, and he was the one that recommended me to J&J. So I'm still humbled, Jeff, that you thought highly of me. And a lot of what I'll talk about today is, again, just insider tips. And I'll focus a lot on the, really showing up and making sure that you're doing your part to ensure that you're showing up the best that you can. So a little bit about my background. Again, I joined J&J about 8.5 years ago in a part-time role for a role that they were piloting while completing my master's degree at Rutgers University in HR. I did start as a contractor, and I'll kind of touch base with about that at the end in terms of how you can get yourself into organizations. But during my time with J&J, I've had a variety of different roles within recruiting, have switched roles about every 18 months to 2 years, have also done HR business partner rotations and rotations with our training team. Most recently, I stepped into an HR lead within our TA department, specifically within a diversity engagement and delivery team, where really we are building this team as we're flying the plane, and essentially we're streamlining processes for D&I recruiting strategies. We're assessing partnerships, project managing conferences, events, and really the end goal is to enable recruiters across the organization to execute on diversity strategies. So what I'd love to talk about in the next couple of minutes, there's a ton that I would love to cover, but I'll really mainly focus a lot on networking and insider tips on the interview process. So in terms of networking, and I know this can be a little bit of a broad topic, but today I'll talk about navigating in a virtual landscape. And really, I would say there's no way to truly replicate the traditional networking. But I think with everything that we have going on in the world, we'd really have had to transition and adapt. And I think this is a really critical skill to work on and develop, because what organizations have noticed is that being in the virtual space works. And I think that it's highly unlikely that moving forward, we're going to go back to the way that things used to be. Organizations are really going to leverage the virtual landscape. So it's really important for us to really prepare for these online interactions, really push ourselves out of our comfort zone and be proactive. But in all of this, making sure that we're still being authentic, and that when the day comes that we're going to be face to face with our colleagues again, that we're showing up as the same person that we are behind screens. One of the things that I really just want to dive deep on is LinkedIn, and I think we've all. I would hope that everyone here has a LinkedIn profile. I think maybe individuals have attended LinkedIn webinars, but I'd like to kind of see it from a different perspective in terms that LinkedIn goes beyond just an online resume. And there's really many different ways in which you should be leveraging it in order to create that engagement. And something else is LinkedIn is not just a resource for searching for jobs, but also a resource for developing yourself and your career. So part of what you should be doing, in addition to making sure that you have a LinkedIn profile, a picture, is really going in there and making sure that you're engaged. And part of that is following hashtags, following and engaging with companies, following leaders. Really think about what are you interested in. So if you're an engineer interested in digital surgery and robotics, which is a really up and coming topic, do your research, look up the top companies, the leaders, comment, repost, and don't be afraid to reach out to leaders because you'd be surprised how open leaders are in connecting you with other people, even connecting you with you themselves. A perfect example of this is in my current role, we actually benchmark with external organizations on D&I initiatives. So we have roundtables with organizations like Google and Apple, and we sit down and we say, let's transfer knowledge. Like, how are you tracking D&I? How are you tracking this talent? And a lot of how we make these connections is via LinkedIn. We're reaching out to individuals in other organizations via LinkedIn. So really make sure that even if you're not looking for a job, this is an opportunity for you to network, to build on different skills, to shadow people. So really you want to think about on leveraging LinkedIn in that way. The other insider tip that I'll share is that LinkedIn is probably the number one resource that we use to source talent in our organization. And I probably feel comfortable in saying that every single organization probably leverages LinkedIn in that way. So think about, we're a global organization. We have so many internal tools, but we are still out there relying on LinkedIn. So this is why it's really important for you to make sure that you have everything, your profile completed, that you're engaging, because we are always out there searching for talent. And if you're not taking these initiatives, you may be missing out on an opportunity of a recruiter or even an agency reaching out to you. So where to start? It can be really intimidating in terms of, thinking about where to start, who to reach out to. So start small. Hopefully you have a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, your number one homework after this is to go out and create one. Start small with your close circle of friends, groups, extracurricular, academics, professional groups, and be intentional. So what is your goal? Are you looking for a new job? Are you looking for self-development, career development? What areas of interest do you have? And really try and narrow it down in that way and have a focus so that things kind of start to make sense for you. Also be aware of new and unconventional opportunities. So really being open and connecting with people that you may doubt if it even makes sense, or you may not be sure if you should be reaching out, but be open to it. And also, yes, some connections have more influence than others, but really treat every interaction and every person the same, just because you never know who can advocate for you. And lastly, again, just make sure that you are being yourself. Sometimes it's really easy to say the right thing or say what other individuals want to hear. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're being yourself, authentic, and that you're setting yourself up for success. Now, before I dive a little bit into the actual some interviewing tips, I love to highlight this because I don't know that many people really understand how the application process works in terms of when you're submitting an application. And I know that through the job search, it could be really intimidating, exhausting, especially when you're applying and you're not hearing back. So what I love to share with individuals is you have to be really purposeful about the jobs that you're applying for. And one thing to focus on is every job description will have a qualifications section. Now, there'll be qualifications that are required and qualifications that are preferred. Anything that is required means the individual must meet those requirements in order to be considered. For compliance purposes, we cannot even open your application if you don't meet those minimum requirements. And this is typically the scenarios where you may receive a rejection right away because the system automatically screens you out. And that can be really discouraging. But if you're applying for the right jobs and the jobs that you actually qualify, the right level, that's when you're more likely to have success. And I know it's kind of challenging sometimes to understand the leveling that makes sense, but if you're really following these qualifications, that's usually when you'll be able to figure out, okay, I have this experience. Versus anything that's preferred, it's more of a nice to have, not necessarily required, and it won't necessarily screen you out of the process. So jumping a little bit into the interview prep, I'll talk a little bit about the mindset, how to prepare the behavior-based responses and kind of what we're looking for from a hiring manager and a recruiting perspective, and some of the best practices. So in terms of the mindset, I know interviewing can be really overwhelming. It really is for everyone, including myself when we're interviewing internally. But you really should approach the interview in certainly prepare, but just remind yourself that it's a conversation between two parties trying to understand if it's a good fit. And keep in mind that just as much as we're interviewing you, you're also interviewing us. You want to make sure that you are accepting a role that makes sense with an organization that makes sense, where you'll be happy. And in terms of the interview preparation, so prior to every interview, even if it's just an interview with a recruiter, a quick phone screen, prepare. And a little bit in terms of, I know we may all have heard some of the basic things that we should be preparing for, but I'll dive a little deeper into, in terms of researching the company. So of course, research the history of the company, where they operate, some of the programs, the brand, where they position themselves in the market. But the main thing to focus on here is researching the values of the company. For J&J specifically, we call it the credo. But where it ties back is that every single one of our interview questions, they are behavioral-based interview questions, and they are specifically tied to our values. So if I showed you a behavioral-based question, I could tell you exactly how it ties back to our values. And this is what we're trying to assess for. We're trying to make sure that in answering your questions, we're able to see that your actions reflect our values. And so we're looking to find people that match our values and our culture. So it's not just about searching the history, but it's about searching the values and making sure that they align with your values as well, and what you're looking for, because the culture is really, really important. In terms of the JD, you'd be surprised how many people show up to interviews and they're not really sure what they're interviewing for. So while we don't expect you to know the job exactly, what you'll be supporting, you really need to understand the basic roles and responsibilities, and pay attention to the skills, what the business is looking for, because you want to make sure that you're thinking about how you have those skills and how you can transfer those skills to this new role. And then lastly, preparing. And by that, my biggest recommendation is usually make the assumption that it's going to be a behavioral based interview. And the best way to prepare for that is to think of 5 specific examples that you will be able to that you can familiarize yourself with, and it'll follow a STAR method. I'll cover that on this next slide, but really familiarize yourself with the examples, and you'll be able to leverage those 5 examples for whatever questions they ask. So don't think about that, the fact that you have to prepare like all these 10 examples, or you have to know everything word by word. It's really about familiarize yourself with 5 examples and leverage those examples during the interview process. Practice your elevator speech. So it's that 3 to 5 minute intro where you're essentially giving a commercial on your background and highlighting your key skills. And then make sure that you are coming prepared with questions that you can ask at the end of the interview. Always ask questions. If you do not ask any questions at the end, it'll be a red flag. I understand that maybe during a screening process, you may not have as many questions, but if you're having a formal interview with the business, this is your opportunity to learn more about the role, what they're looking for them to tell you about an individual that has been successful and what skills did they have. So really making sure that you're preparing that as well. Now, in terms of the behavioral interviewing, now this is the most common type of interview questions. And as I mentioned before, it's really seeking to learn about how you respond in a specific particular situation. And what we're looking for is for you to follow the STAR method. So if, for example, they ask, tell me about a time you had a challenge with a customer. The way that you should really be answering that, and it's broken down, making sure that you're sharing like, what is the situation? What is the scenario? Paint the picture for the interviewer. What is the task? So what was your objective in terms of what you had to do to solve this? And then what action did you actually take and perform, and walk them through the steps of what you did to resolve the issue? And then what was the response or the result or the outcome as a result? Now, it's really easy to sit there and try to go, okay, this is the situation, this is the task. Don't do that. You need to, and this is why you need to practice. You need to strengthen your storytelling skills so that you're covering all of this, but not necessarily sounding robotic in that you're going through every single step. So if that means phoning a friend and saying, hey, Google behavioral-based interview questions and just ask me random questions, and then from there you're leveraging your 5 examples, that's usually the best way to practice and familiarize yourself. The other thing I like to share is it's really easy to get nervous and overwhelmed during an interview. And when they ask a question, you just want to answer immediately. And it's really not about speed. And there's honestly nothing wrong with saying, number one, asking them to repeat the question, because sometimes they can be lengthy and wordy. And number two, just asking them, oh, can I just have a couple of seconds? And it's okay to reference your notes. And it's okay to take a couple of seconds to look at your notes and examples and say, okay, this is a good fit for this answer. We're not looking for the person that'll answer the quickest. We're looking for that person that will give that thorough answer that helps us understand their skills and experiences. Now, in terms of transferable skills, and this is where I tell individuals, do not sell yourself short. I think we are our worst critics sometimes, and it's really important for us to think about the transferable skills. I know it's really easy to say, you know what, I don't have this experience. I don't know how this would be a good fit, but that we're not necessarily looking often for the direct experience. we're looking as we're interviewing and asking these behavioral based questions, we're really trying to learn how you have the ability to work in teams, be a leader, communicate inside the organization and external partners, how you can problem solve, make decisions, organize. So it's really important for you to focus on, okay, what experiences do you have and how can you leverage them? So if you're an undergrad, think about group projects, how you've led an organization, maybe experiences within an internship. Or if you're already in the workforce, think about, if there's a question about a customer, it doesn't have to be directly related. Think about just a time when you were in a similar situation and scenario where your actions and skills that you had to use were similar. Now, in terms of the virtual interviewing, so with the shift into the virtual recruiting, we're now leveraging different tools and technology, and one of those is the pre-recorded virtual interviews. This is usually more at the front end of the process. So perhaps after you've applied and you get selected, it's a one-way interview where the candidate records their answers to questions without the interviewer being on the other end. Often, again, as I mentioned, it's early stages. It'll be 3 to 5 questions. There's a set time to answer each question, and you may be able to repeat it before you submit. And then you have your live virtual interviews, which are more formal. We leverage conferencing platforms like Zoom, Skype, Teams. It's more of that face-to-face interview. And usually this is scheduled directly through a recruiter or the business. Now, and with the pre-recorded interviews, usually there is a time frame and a deadline. So it's important to pay special attention to that. And in terms of best practices, so a couple of things to keep in mind as you're preparing for virtual interviews. So of course, a lot of it is technology related. So making sure that you're checking the capabilities of your devices, that you have reliable internet connection, that you're disabling any alerts that may come up during the interview, that you're being professional in terms of your virtual identity. So any screen names or emails. We want to make sure we're not using old emails from high school that maybe aren't professional. Choosing the appropriate place to record or where there's limited noise or good lighting, making sure that you're using an appropriate background. And if you don't have one, you can use a virtual background. And as I mentioned before, just really critical to make sure that you practice and that you're showing up prepared. We can tell when you've done your homework, and it's a great way to start the interview because it shows that you have that initiative and that you're passionate about the role. Really important to use professional body language, dress appropriately. When in doubt, always wear a suit. If my biggest recommendation is wear a suit to every single interview. Even when I'm interviewing internally with people I know, I always wear a suit just because I feel it makes me feel a little bit more prepared. It makes me feel good, and I feel like I'm showing up well. And then just to drive the part about being authentic. Again, it's really, especially as you're going through more and more interviews, you start to get a better idea of what recruiters are looking for or what they want to hear. And while that's great, you want to make sure that you're landing a job that actually makes sense and that's actually a good fit and that you'll like once you're in it, and that you're setting yourself up for success. So just make sure that you're being authentic and that you're being honest about your skills and experiences. And what I'll leave you guys with, I know we're coming up on time, but just think of an interview essentially as a sales call. So it's matching a product features to the needs. So be clear as you're going through the process. Be clear about what the employer needs, and that you are able to effectively communicate how you can satisfy those needs of skills or experiences. Make sure you're selling your features. Don't sell yourself short. And make sure that you are elaborating on the benefits and accomplishments and solutions that you can bring to an organization. Usually 90% of employers say that the primary reason they don't hire a candidate is because the interview could not clearly state their skills. So a lot of the times it's not necessarily that the individuals don't have the experience, is that they can't verbalize or tell their story. And in today's day and age, interviewing is really, really competitive. So sometimes it really comes down to who had the better interview. We can have multiple really great candidates, but it really comes down to were you able to deliver through the interview process? And that could really be the deal breaker. So I'll stop right there. I'll take a breath, and I'll open it up for questions. And Kristen, Jeff, let me know if there's anything else that you want me to cover.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
I came in a few minutes late, so I'm not sure if I missed this. So this has to do with virtual interviewing. So during a virtual interview, like if you were in person, like obviously you'd be making eye contact. So like right now it's a little different. So like, should I be like making sure I'm looking directly into the camera? Like, is it okay if I'm looking at myself on the screen? Like, how are recruiters looking at that right now?
Yeah, so, and great question. Yes, make sure you're looking at the camera. I know that sometimes the camera doesn't necessarily align where kind of like the picture is, and as long as you're looking at the screen towards the camera, towards the recruiter, that works. What we don't want you to be doing is, that you're not looking to the side, or that you're not like always looking down at your notes. Again, it's okay to reference your notes. And in fact, I've had interviews where after I ask a question, individuals say, can I just have a couple of seconds? And they'll go down there, they'll take a look at their notes, and then they answer. So it's okay to reference your notes, but yes, you want to make sure that you're trying to make as much eye contact as possible.
Okay, thank you so much. And one more quick thing. So sometimes when I'm doing interviews, I'm taking notes on my computer. Do you think I should always be taking notes like on a notepad instead?
Yeah, I would say, and that's also another great question. And you'll find that a lot of the times the recruiters will usually disclose in advance. You may see me going on and off of mute because I'm taking notes and I don't want to distract you while you're answering questions. But I think on your end, it's probably less distracting if you're doing it on a notepad as opposed to typing on your computer.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
To go off of what you said in regards to note taking during an interview, and also like asking questions, would asking to repeat a question be seen as like we're not prepared? Because like sometimes it takes like a bit for a question to like register when I'm getting interviewed. So it wouldn't be seen as that, or is there like any tips on how to like answer quickly?
Yep, absolutely not. It is not seen at all as being unprepared. In fact, most times I will ask for the question to be repeated, and I will be the first one to admit that behavioral-based interview questions are wordy. And it's really important for you to understand what we're asking to make sure that you're giving us a relevant answer. So there's many times where myself, I'll even say, hey, can you just repeat that? And I will even at the beginning of discussions, a lot of the times say to the candidates, listen, our questions are wordy. feel free to ask me to repeat them because we understand. So it's definitely not seen as being unprepared. And I think two of my colleagues may be on this call. I'm not sure, but Jason and Deirdre, if you are, at any point, feel free to chime in with your recommendations as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
I know we have a question in the chat too. And it says, how can I make my application stand out and get recruiters to notice me? I already highlighted my transferable skills. I'm applying all over. And as a recent grad, it doesn't seem like my resume is enough to catch a recruiter's attention. What can I do to help me land an interview?
Yeah, so one of the things, and this is actually what I did, and part of how I got into J&J, and I think this is something that I didn't really know about this as a recent grad, but one of the best ways to get into an organization and gain experience is through a contracting job. And I know it can sound a little bit intimidating because it's like, is there job security? What does that mean? But basically, there are agencies out there. So most of like global Fortune 500 companies, we have contractors as part of the workforce. So even within our department, for a really long time, the only way you could get into our department is to start off as a contractor. So you have agencies like Kelly Services, Acro, and basically these agencies help place you into contract roles. Usually at J&J, it's 2-year assignments. So it's really an opportunity for you to come into the organization, get experience, and prove yourself. And during that time frame, then you have the opportunity to get converted as a full-time employee. And that is honestly one of the best ways to get into an organization. Agencies are on LinkedIn also searching for talent. But if you reach out to them directly, if you Google agencies local to you, or if you go to Kelly Services website, you can put yourself in touch with someone, and essentially they'll do an intake with you. What experiences do you have? What are you looking for? And then they'll help place you in different organizations. And in the spirit of being open, sometimes it may not be the right level, or it may not be exactly what you're looking for. Of course, make sure that it's a good fit, but be open, because sometimes it's just about getting your foot in the door. But this is really a great way. And I myself started off as a contractor at J&J, and then I was converted into a full-time employee.
Erika, I'm really happy you said that, because I am interested in contract jobs. Do you accept like contract proposals through a specific department of J&J? Because not only am I a matriculated master's student here at Monmouth in anthropology, but also I am a visiting student at Rutgers. So I'm looking into doing a lot of biochem stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm thinking about 2 courses in biochem, but my graduate work is in anthropology and archaeology. So what is who would I contact over the J&J that I can send over my contract proposal?
So for the contract roles, you actually would work through the agencies directly. So the agent, you work with the agencies, and the agencies are aware of all of the openings. And it might not just be J&J. These agencies manage roles across, Merck, Pfizer. Some have focuses on farm, others on the device, but it's you connect with the agencies, and then the agencies are aware of the openings, and then they make the placements. Now, what I will share is that and I'm not sure, but I think they're piloting this where contractor roles are now showing up on our careers website. It was never that way before, but they are showing up. So you can even, when you reach out to an agency, you can say, and I mentioned Kelly Services because I know Kelly Services makes
Okay, they're
a
good.
lot
I
of
will reach
placement.
out to them. Okay.
And you can even reference a specific job and say, hey, I'm interested in this job. Are you supporting this? And is there a way that we can connect on it? So the contract roles are managed through the agencies.
Okay. And does J&J have specific agencies they work with all the time, including, you mentioned Kelly Services, any others that I can at least get on their list? And they know me, they can interview me, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, Kelly Services I know is a big one, probably the main one that I'm aware of. And I think the other one's called Acro. ACRO.
Oh, Acro, just Acro Services, or?
Yeah, I think it's just Acro.
Oh, that's just their acronym.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will Google them. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And thank you for speaking with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope, I know there's a lot that I can cover, so I tried to squeeze in as much as I could, but hopefully I was able to share some good tips.
Definitely, Erica. I know I don't want to keep everybody too much longer, and I appreciate all of the information that you provided. And I hope it's okay, Erica, if people have specific questions, if I put them in contact with you after today as well, so as to not take too much time. Thank you for that. But I think I just wanted to, again, thank you for the valuable information that you shared, and for everyone that's here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to just reiterate Erika's emphasis on networking and the power of the Hawk family, and how Jeff kind of helped set her up with the first entry into Johnson & Johnson. And I think for those moving forward, making this connection with Erika is great. We also have a really great tool if you haven't already joined. It's the Hawk Network, and I'll put the link in the description box here, and then I'll also put my email if anyone needs anything after today. And you can always reach out to Jeff Mass as well in Career Services, but we'd be happy to help you, get you in contact with Erika, and then also connect you with other members of the Hawk family through the Hawk Network. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. And Erika, thank you again. It was amazing to hear from you and have you join us.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. And I'll emphasize the fact that if you're an undergrad, make sure you're getting involved. That is what we look for, because if you don't have the work experience, we have to see other ways that you've been able to kind of put those skills into action. So make sure that you're really being involved on campus. And I'll leave everyone with that.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, and we appreciate all of that amazing advice that you did provide today, Erika. And thank you to everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Erika.